June 2025. Good day, everybody. Connor MacIvor. We're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about what's happening in the market, some new things that have transpired, a little bit of a slowdown with regard to real estate showings and also escrow timeframes. Those haven't extended, but the time to get properties into escrow has actually increased, almost doubled in amount, but that's not saying a lot because the doubling is of 20 days, so about 40, 50 days. Just depends on the property where it's located. And also that buyer drive, that's super important. Whenever you're getting your house ready for sale, you want to make sure that that first glance, that beginning stage when somebody pulls up in front of your house, it's got to be dialed in, folks. It's got to be just pristine. Everything needs to be in its place. Everything should look nice and spick and span. And then when they get inside the house, the next thing is, depending on the outside temperature, you want the interior to be kind of the opposite. So if it's really cold outside, you want the inside warmer, just to show those systems are working. And they come in from a cold environment into a warmer environment. It's like, oh, that's great. And then if you notice new housing and those types of the new construction builders, their strategy is to also do that same thing. So if it's super hot outside, you want the house to be quite cool inside, maybe 70, 69, 70 degrees. So when they walk in off the street out of, 90 or 100-degree heat, it's like, whew, it's just so relaxing, and they just want to get in and shut that door because they just want to be in a colder environment because it feels so good. These are real positive points to be able to add to your listing whenever you get it ready to be shown. So that's super incredible and super important, I should say, and it gives the buyer an incredible experience. Looking at the real estate market, total inventory right now, and the 7-day snapshot. So we're going to start with the 7-day snapshot, then I'll switch over to that screen. What's happening the past 7 days, we've had 11 properties that have been posted coming soon. 98 new listings have entered the market. 95 have had their prices changed up or down, depending. Majority of those are reductions, but those reductions are not digging in or affecting the actual sold prices, historical sold prices. So if you see a property that's sold in a particular neighborhood, when you're looking at it and you see that particular recorded sales price, it's not the fact that we have other properties that are closing at less than that amount, as long as everything's apples and apples across the board. If one has a pool and another one doesn't, and the one sells after the one with a pool sells, the other one that sold after the one with a pool is typically going to be less, because pools add value. Remodeling as well, updating as well, renovations as well. These add value to property, and usually those need to be paid very strict attention to, but that depends on competition. Maybe you don't have a lot of competition. Maybe you have neglected certain things in your property. Maybe you haven't touched up or changed anything. It really takes an expert to come in and say what is and what isn't, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. But typically in this type of market where you still have more buyer drive than sellers, yes, we are getting more inventory added to the market, but there's still quite a few buyers out there. But people are holding a little steady right now because the insuredness in the world, not just the economy, and that's maybe a smaller part, but the war thing, people fighting in the Middle East and us doing what we needed to do or what happened and so on and so forth. People are a little concerned. So selling and buying usually kind of pulls back just a little bit during these times, but there's rumor out there that the Fed chair is going to potentially reduce that bank rate, the Fed funds rate, which it typically has a trickle down effect and will start to affect the mortgage rates as well. If that happens, then the market's going to kick off, and it would create more difficulty to buyers in the present market because that competition is going to go through the roof. But that's going to depend on how low they actually lower the Fed funds rate and how much effect that's going to have on the actual mortgage interest rate, which there is some overflow there, but typically the mortgage rates are based on the 10-year bond. So that's why you see those fluctuations without any change in the Fed funds rate, because I know that Powell has been vehemently against any kind of reduction in that rate. And we have Trump, of course, saying, you better reduce it, and then all those other things happening. So it's kind of they're kind of going back and forth with each other, and we will see how that's going to pan out. But I believe on Powell's own that should happen, or probably will happen, because that's really the only part of the economy that seems to be kind of held back right now. If that were to be changed, just like everything else, we would start seeing a lot of movement in the real estate world. I don't know if it's going to affect those people that have those golden handcuffs on. Golden handcuffs is a term in real estate where we refer to the people that have those super low mortgage rates, 2 and 3%. I don't believe that's going to affect it, but it could be something that getting the rates down in the fours, maybe low fives, could kick off those people, because it's, 1 or 2 percentage points in difference from their current mortgage. Maybe they couldn't even think about selling and moving, and they can't move to buy something else because they need whatever equity's trapped in the current residence where they live, and they don't want to get a second on it or pull any money out or do any kind of refinancing. Well, when you do the refinancing, then that adjusts that mortgage rate. So these are non-options for them. But if on the other end of it, mortgage rates did come down, we would see a lot of movement, probably depending on how low they came in that particular sector. We would see those people that have the golden handcuffs actually start to move a lot faster than they are currently. So let's look at just the overall inventory real quick, and I will give you that. So total right now, if we look at actual coming soon listings, 15. That's down from 5 yesterday. That's what's current now. Yesterday was 15 coming soon. And we look at the total inventory, 778. I think maybe at 775 yesterday. So that's going to fluctuate. We haven't breached 800 at this point. I don't know if we will now that we're deep into summer. Well, kind of beginning of summer, I guess. But as we get further into July and August, we'll see. I think those first couple weeks in July will be very revealing as to what's happening in real estate. And also that's going to be dependent on what's going on in the world as well. Something to think about when you're out there looking. Just when you're searching for real estate, a couple of different podcasts I've been watching lately by people talking about the world economic factors that are affecting localized real estate. They're talking about a slump and properties not selling for as much, and dips in actual recorded sold prices. Yes, that's true. And yes, that is happening at certain places in the country. But you can pretty much bet on the fact that when you're near a major metropolitan area, when you're around a major city, a city that has a lot of infrastructure, a lot of people going to work, a lot of business, a very robust economy, those areas outside that main city, they're going to retain their value a lot longer than, let's say, something around a small city in the Midwest, or something that has a lower population, houses spread out more, without that connection between some major commerce or industrial area versus, just not really having a lot in the way of infrastructure and other types of attractive qualities to it. So you're going to see those areas start to deteriorate in value and sales time when the market starts its shift. It doesn't always have to remain that way, however. It could continue that if there is some change in the rate or some change in the economy, those could be positive or negative factors. But if they're positive, you're going to see those factors change, where it's going to go back to a more solid seller's market than we see now. We are not all the other way of the end of the pendulum as it swings. We're not in a full-blown buyer's market either, because properties that are coming onto the market are still selling, and they're not taking 6 and 8 months like they did way back in the day. We've seen the market start to move and continue to evolve. We just have maybe a doubling of the increasing of timeframes. And as I said at the beginning of the video, that's double means 40, 50, 60 days, not 6 months. Watch the inventory. My suggestion, if you're a home buyer, you're looking for real estate, make sure your agent does their due diligence. Santa Clarita is kind of unique in the way that it's all organized by tract code. So it's not complicated for somebody to take all the sold listings in a particular tract that very much match the house you're going to be buying, which happens to be in the same tract or AKA neighborhood, but maybe a smaller snapshot of it. They're able to upload that information into one of the large language models, ChatGPT. Even the real estate systems have some of these, but they can actually have it look at the listing that you're interested in purchasing with historical solds, and then develop a strategy with regard to offering. That's hugely important because where the syndication sites are going to be missing a lot of the pertinent data, like what's been renovated, what's been remodeled, why does this particular residence stand out above the historical sold properties? By looking at these full sheets and by digesting them, it's not a lot of data, but it's enough. And it's more than a human being would be able to research. It would take them a lot of time. The system itself is going to be able to crunch those numbers and then say, well, this property here, this would be a great offering strategy because it has this and this and this. And then it can actually extract values based on particular remodels, upgrades, additions, and variations that the properties have that others don't. For example, if a single family residence becomes for sale in a particular neighborhood and the competition and historical solds are 2-story, it can do the research and find out what that price per square foot increase would be for a single story residence. Because they're more rare, they carry a higher price per square foot value. If a house happens to have a view, what is the additional monetary requirement to have a view? What does that add to a property? And then you still might judge and say, well, this property, is still X amount of dollars above where that actual offering value is. Then you make your offer accordingly. Don't get caught up in where those prices are, because at the end of the day, those sellers are going to look at whatever reports those agents representing those buyers are turning in. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. That is, if they want to sell. And also the other thing to factor in, and don't forget this, it's going to come down to the appraisal. If the appraisal from your lender that's going to be ordered on your behalf, what you're paying for, the appraiser goes out to the property and says the value isn't there. Folks, the value isn't there. And the last time I checked, most banks are in it for themselves, for their shareholders. They're not going to run a risk and gamble and overvalue a property when it comes to the appraisal. They're only going to loan on it what they really deem it's worth. And it's not just simple with the appraiser just putting through the report after they've done the appraisal, coming back and everybody taking that report as if it's the word of God out of the holy book itself. That's not the way it works. There's many different levels of fail safes and checks and balances in that particular system. You got underwriters, you got other people that are trained in appraiser that are going to look. And if on that report, it's showing something that, well, they're comparing this house with this house. This house is 23 miles away in a whole different city with a whole different dynamic, so on. They will look and they will pick it apart. And if there are issues, they will come back. And it's not done there either. So let's say the report comes back and there's been a total discrepancy in value. As a listing agent, I've done this several times where they have asked me to write a rebuttal to the appraisal report. Then it's up to me. I will put together the information. I will go look in the multiple listing service, the historical solds, because in those cases, every single one has been completed by an appraiser that was not local to our market. Now, they're not far. They're not like in another state flying out here just to appraise a property. They might be in San Diego or Sacramento. You wouldn't believe how far people go. That goes with real estate agents. A lot of people will just drive 4 or 5 hours to represent a buyer. Times are tough, so they're going to go wherever they need to go. Is that person able to serve your needs, though? Do they know that market that well? Maybe they were from there. Maybe they understand it. Knowing the market is also good, but more importantly, do they know the housing? Do they know if there's some issues that are only known to the local agents versus themselves? Another show for another time. But in those appraisal reports, they were verifying and giving values that actually undercut the actual subject property. Whenever I would respond to them, I would put together a comprehensive look, a CMA, if you will, competitive market analysis, and I would put that down and I would be able to line it up and typically get the appraisers to actually increase their value, not by smoke and mirrors or nonsense, but by true value, because they missed it, because they just didn't understand the way that the local housing happened to be configured. And it hasn't been a lot of times, but it's been enough. So you need a savvy agent on your side able to make that work. And as a real estate buyer, you want somebody that's going to be on your side as well, looking out for all of this nonsense information and making sense of it for you. Anyway, I hope you're well. Thank you so much for watching. I am Connor with Honor. I will see you in the next one. Don't forget Santa Clarita openhouses.com. You'll see that information, and I'd love to assist you whenever you have